The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Minnesota Timberwolves are headed back to the conference finals for the second consecutive year.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast.
I mean, this was pretty much a blowout throughout. I know Golden State got it down to, the Wolves had it up to 21 late in the third. Golden State got it down to 9 in the fourth quarter, and then the Wolves pushed it back up to 14 immediately with a quick 5-0 run, and I don't think it got below 11 or 12 after that. This was pretty much a blowout. Through and through. Golden State never led by more than one, and that was very early in this game. It was nearly a wire-to-wire win. You look at the box score and what jumps out, and we're going to dig into this a bit. The Wolves shot just an insane 62.8% from the field in this game. They shot 41.9%, so 42% on threes. And they dominated the paint 72-50. But they also really struggled in some pretty obvious areas that I was worried about coming into the series. They turned the ball over 20 times, which was kind of a theme in this series as one of the things the Wolves were doing well in spite of their turnover issues. I believe this was the third straight game in the series that they've had 19 or more turnovers or something like that, or maybe it's even 20 or more. I'll pull that up here. But that just continues to be a problem for the Wolves. And so they won in spite of that. They allowed Golden State to attempt twice as many free throws as them, which we can get into why that could be. But the Wolves shot 15 free throws. Golden State shot 30 free throws in this game. And yet the Timberwolves still ended up winning by 11 points. And again, led by 20 plus at various points in the second half. So each of the other thing is they gave 18 offensive rebounds to Golden State. So another category in which they were completely dominated. And yet they still won by a very comfortable double-digit margin. The turnover number, I was right about that initially. They had 2 games ago in game 3, the Timberwolves had 21 turnovers. In game 4, they had 21 turnovers. And total in this game, they also had 21 turnovers. They had 21 turnovers in each of the last 3 games, which is just way too many. Now, of course, it helped in this game that Golden State turned it over 17 times themselves. So, that certainly kind of canceled out a lot of the Wolves' miscues and points off turnovers. It's not like the Warriors were gangbusters there. In fact, it was pretty even in terms of points per possession off of turnovers. So just running through the categories, that would jump off the page. What was most notable to me was how impressive the Wolves' offense was when they weren't turning the ball over. The ball movement was really crisp in this game. Ant had some bad moments in terms of just his handle looked a little bit off tonight. There were a couple of kind of early Jaden McDaniels possessions where he was a little bit weirdly aggressive, just a handful of possessions here and there, but for the most part, nearly wire to wire, the Wolves offense was actually really impressive. The biggest problem was the sloppy turnovers in the backcourt. It happened off of rebounds. It happened there. I think Jaden McDaniels had 2 turnovers after getting defensive rebounds. In the backcourt, basically, 90 feet from the Wolves basket. They had multiple turnovers like that. They had, in transition, Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, guys just being sloppy with the basketball on the open floor. But the half court, when Minnesota actually got their offense set up, the turnovers weren't nearly as bad in the half court. They weren't nearly as frequent. And I thought that the movement was really good. They had crisp ball movement. The Warriors were aggressively doubling. The second quarter looked a lot like the Lakers series, and that's when Rudy Gobert had his big kind of moments in this game. He was, I think, 5 of 5 at halftime. He finished 8 of 9 for 17 points. 17 and 8 in a closeout game for Rudy after he was dominant in the closeout game against the Lakers. And I do think there's something to the, obviously, the defensive strategy and the desperation level that the Lakers had in game 5 and now the Warriors had in game 5 where, hey, we're just going to seriously blitz Ant on the perimeter. Golden State was even blitzing, I think it was start of the fourth quarter. They put 2 on Mike Conley, and they forced a turnover. They were just all over the place trying to create this high variance game because they knew that was their only chance. And to the Wolves' credit, in spite of the turnovers, they got a lot of clean 3-point looks because of the Warriors double teams. And so I also think I don't want to say to the Wolves' credit, but I think it's important that we remember the context of just how aggressive this defense is. It's a little bit like, and it's not the same, it's better than this, but the first Chris Finch full season prior to the Rudy Gobert trade, which was the year they got the 6th seed. They played Memphis in the first round, took the 3 seed Memphis to 6 games, which, by the way, was the only series that the Ja Morant Grizzlies have won in the Ja Morant era. I remember when people thought he was better than Anthony Edwards, and it was never the case. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on there, but I shouldn't say never the case. He was better than him before a lot of the other stuff happened with Ja Morant. But now it's not close, right? Like Ant is just a better player. I don't want to turn this into that conversation, but I digress in a big way here. But the point is that Wolves team was undermanned defensively. This Warriors team has Draymond Green. They have Jimmy Butler. They've obviously got defensive pieces. That Wolves team was trying to create a high variance game. They were trying to blitz pick and rolls. They were trying to get turnovers and go the other way because they didn't have a half court offense that was going to be able to score with any efficiency, any regularity at all. And the defense didn't have a rim protector and was reliant on just being fast and athletic and young and creating a higher variance game against, when they were usually the underdogs. That's basically, on a really simplistic level, what Golden State was doing. They don't have a traditional rim protector. They don't have a lot of size. Yes, they have some very good individual defenders in Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, but they're both better as team defenders, especially at this stage in their careers, each of them. So what did they want to do? They wanted to put 2 on the ball. They wanted to shoot the gaps. They wanted to be aggressive in trying to turn the Wolves over. And they did it to the tune of 21 turnovers in each of the last 3 games. However, they still didn't score enough off of those Wolves turnovers. And it's the same reason that the Wolves did this several years ago with Chris Finch at the helm. Pre-Rudy Gobert, it's because, as I mentioned a minute ago, there just isn't enough offense. And especially if you're going to get what Buddy Hield have, 8 points on 9 shots, didn't make a 3-pointer in this game. If Jimmy Butler's only going to shoot the basketball 11 times, he didn't get the line 11 times, but Butler only ended up with 11 field goals in the box score because all he did was get fouled. 17 points on 11 shots for him. Like, if you're not going to get offense anywhere else, you have to generate it in transition. And so that's what the Warriors are trying to do. So I want to give that context and remind everyone that, like, yes, the Wolves turned it over a bunch, but the Warriors are playing a really high-risk defense. Now, the Thunder do the same thing, but they're just a lot better at it. And they're also very good in the half court, and they're not fully reliant on forcing opponent turnovers. Like, that's something we could talk about. If the Thunder ends up being the Wolves' opponent in the conference finals, Denver's obviously a very different defense, but that is kind of the thought process behind what Golden State did. And that's at least in part why the Wolves ended up with so many turnovers. So yeah, turning it over 21 times is not ideal. It allowed Golden State to get out in transition a bit. They ended up with actually just 7 fast break points, Golden State did. So a lot of these turnovers, it's not like the Warriors did a whole lot with them on the other end. And honestly, like, the Wolves defensively, I thought were really good. I know Golden State ended up with 110 points. It's because they had an absolute free throw parade, but Minnesota held them to 43% from the field and 28% on threes. I thought Minnesota's half-court scramble was really, really good, and also scrambling to get back in transition.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game. Whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup, finding great seats at a great price, though, that used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
The Celtics stay alive. As Jaylen Brown said, they got to beat us 4 times. And so far, the Knicks have only beat them 3. Celtics get the 127-102 win. Later on, I'll talk about Kristaps Porzingis and why I think they still need to start him in Game 6. I know immediately you're thinking I'm crazy. I'll tell you why later on. I'll get to Derek White's game. I'll get to Jaylen Brown's game, which I think was perfect. Luke Cornett in just a minute. But let's be honest. Should we not have seen this coming? I blame myself. I'm the one that's supposed to be telling you how things are going to go. And I really feel like I let you down because this Celtics team, it's not last year's Celtics team. And the one thing that they are known for is this is the kind of like the pattern of a couple years ago where prosperity is not their friend. Whenever we think they've got something locked up and it's all set and they're good, they tend to kind of disappoint. They kind of suck. And then once we write them off and we're like, oh God, forget it, these guys will never do it, they turn around and they play great. They're the opposite of a front runner, I guess. They cannot handle the prosperity, and they love their back being against the wall. So the instant everything was lining up where even the Knicks fans were thinking, oh yeah, you guys got this, it's easy. Once I saw everybody like on board with the Celtics blowing the Knicks out, I should have been saying on the podcast, I should have been saying, watch out, this is not going to go the way we think it is. That's on me. Hand up my bad. This is the pattern. And then down 3-1. Now, no one could have expected the Tatum injury, but down 3-1, I could absolutely see them coming back and winning this series. I've said before, I said in yesterday's podcast, they have the horses. They have more than enough. They have enough guys. People were writing the Celtics off after the Tatum injury. They're saying they're dead, that the season is over. It's not over. The Knicks up 3-1. Yeah, teams don't normally come back from 3-1, but it's not impossible. This Knicks team is not exactly a shut the door, definitely going to close things out kind of team. They're shaky. There's a reason why everyone was picking against them, because the Celtics are who they are and the Knicks are who they are. So Celtics with their backs against the wall, you knew they were going to come out with some level of fire. You knew they were going to come out with some level of focus, and they did both. Now, it wasn't great right away, but you could feel at some point, like if they just get a little bit of a run together, then they can really take off. And this is a classic Celtics game where, okay, first quarter up and down, there were some moments, but they didn't finish the quarter well. And you start to admonish them and say, guys, you got to end that quarter great. Last 38 seconds of the first quarter, you gave up a 7-1, 8-1 run. Can't do that at the end of the first quarter. And that run spilled over into the second quarter. You're like, okay, maybe it's not going to go great. And then Luke Cornett checks in and gives them a boost, and things change in that second half of the third quarter, where Luke starts for Kristaps Porzingis, and the Celtics just catch fire. Celtics, their blowouts kind of follow a similar pattern where it's rolling along. Boom. Oh my God. You just got crushed. And then they roll along. Kind of similar in this one. Now, it didn't go the way we thought it would, because Luke Cornett was the catalyst. Jaylen Brown had I think a perfect game in response to Jason, being the guy with Jason out. And obviously Derek White's got the gaudy scoring numbers, but it starts with Luke Cornett in the third quarter with his defense. 5 block shots. He had 7 block shots, a career high, 7 block shots, 5 in the third quarter. He was all over the place. The Knicks, it felt like they didn't even think that Luke Cornett mattered out there. They just thought, you know what? We're not worried about him. Porzingis is off the floor. We're fine. And it turns out that you wanted Porzingis on the floor, because he was, once again, bad in this game. Just bad. Disappointing, kind of like sad in a way. So they didn't seem like they were worried. Once Porzingis was on, they said, oh, he's starting the second half on the bench. Good for us. And they just kept driving, and Cornett kept swooping in. It was the same classic Celtics defense. Cornett was on Josh Hart, and Hart had a good first half and was hitting threes. And even the beginning of the third quarter, it was feeling like the Celtics were kind of, we're good with what Josh Hart does, and Hart was feeling like, okay, sure, no problem. He scored 24 points, 5 of 9 shooting, but that second half he tailed off. I thought Kornet did a great job of bothering Hart while still being able to help defensively. He, aside from just the block shots, Kornet was able to deter drives. He was able to bother shots. He was able to kind of, at some point, be okay, we see him. We're going to, he's clogging the paint. And then he get back out to, when they kick it to Hart, not overreact, but he'd get out to a spot where Hart felt like if he shot it, maybe Kornet could challenge it, and he didn't want to take that challenge, that contested shot. Probably felt like, I can take this big goofy guy off the dribble, and maybe he got baited into some attacks that didn't work out well. Either way, Kornet comes in, changes the entire dynamic of the game, is blocking shots. The defense picks up. The Celtics get out into transition. 32-17, they win the quarter. They had a run it started with, about at the 10-minute mark, I'd say, a 16-3 run when it was a 1-point game still, and turned it into a 14-point game. I stopped it at 16-3 because that's when the Knicks started to score a little bit. But if you really want to extend it out, it's a 23-9 run from the 1-point game with about 10 minutes to go until the end of the quarter. So the Celtics, basically, it's plus 14. They were up 1 at halftime. They went into the fourth quarter up 15 and then just kept pouring it on after that. So first and foremost, shout out to Luke Kornet for stepping up. Porzingis didn't play in the entire second half, and Kornet played 25 and a half, 25 and a half minutes, and was great, just great. And if you're trying to win a championship, and if you're trying to make a comeback here, and you've got to be willing to roll with different lineups. If this was the regular season, I think they might have let Porzingis try to play through some stuff in this desperation mode of, hey, our season is on the line. They said, you know what, we're going with this guy. And after the game, Kornet was like, hey, sometimes these shots, these plays just kind of line themselves up. And it's almost like a defensive version of the hot hand theory. And it seemed like it because he just kept getting the block after block after block. One time he got a block on the sideline, saved it, came down, play gets worked around, great Celtics basketball, and it ends up in a pick and roll dunk for Kornet. He caught a reverse alley-oop lob. I mean, come on. This is Luke Kornet's night.
The Panthers go into Toronto and blow them out of the building.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers.
The Florida Panthers defeated the Toronto Maple Leafs by a final score of 6-1 in Game 5, an opportunity for the Panthers to go on the road where the Panthers, just how much they swarmed the Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 4, continued here into Game 5. And I spoke about it going into this one, how it feels like it was more than just a fresh start. The Panthers brought Jesper Boquist into the game, and he ends up getting on the score sheet for the Panthers on that 3-on-2. And then also the Toronto Maple Leafs tried countering with their roster moves, bringing in David Camp and Nick Robertson into the lineup for them. And wow, the Panthers finished this one early in the second period and just went away running with this one. This is the type of relaxing kind of win you want for the Florida Panthers. So what a game, my friend.
I'll take this all day, every day. I know that for the neutrals, the casual observers, 6-1 hockey game was not the most fun thing. The third period felt like it lasted forever with all the scrums and the penalties when the game had already been decided. But I mean, my goodness, the momentum swing, Armando, where, for the past 3 games, but I mean, tonight was the blowout. Tonight was the culmination. I know the series is not over, but you talk about turning momentum on its head. And from where I sit, first of all, Paul Maurice always presses the right buttons when it comes to his line changes and his lineup changes. Like he he tinkers, he never over tinkers, never under tinkers. I mean, he knows his roster, he knows his personnel so well. Every move he makes, he has the Midas touch. But then the other part of it is, it's so clear before we get to the nuts and bolts and how the whole game played out. It's so clear that the mentality of this Florida Panthers team is so strong, coming off a Stanley Cup last year, coming off of 2 NHL finals, Stanley Cup finals appearances, how these guys just know emotionally how to react and how to show up in the big spots. And you can easily contrast what you saw. I mean, this game was in Toronto, right? You're in a hostile environment. At least it started out that way. Hostile environment with nearly 14,000 people at, the city that considers themselves to be the epicenter of the hockey universe. And you go out there and you hand the Maple Leafs a blowout in a game where, Armando, for as well as the Panthers played, on the flip side of that, the Maple Leafs were lifeless, honestly. And I felt that way from, they had like a moment, I think the start of the second period, they played pretty well, like the first couple of minutes, but really outside of that, you look at a team, and I know the thing for Toronto, and this is the narrative for them, which is obvious, in the playoffs, 9 straight years, haven't gotten past the second round. And you contrast that with the success that the Panthers have had for these past few seasons, and you can see it. Like the Maple Leafs seem to wilt under the pressure, being in front of that home crowd after giving up 2 straight games, and the response just wasn't there, whereas the Panthers have completely taken momentum onto their side.
No doubt. And I mean, to think that even in the first 5 minutes, there's 1 shot on goal for each team. I mean, with how tight it was. And then you see there was a similar breakaway that Sergei Bobrovsky stopped on William Nylander with Gustav Forsling back-checking him. And then right before the second TV timeout, it flipped on its head where it was 19-4 shot attempt advantage in the favor of the Panthers then. And then just with the lineup changes, you talk about not over tinkering or under tinkering. The first goal that manifested for the Panthers, the Sam Reinhart bats it out of the air. The Panthers stripped the Austin Matthews line. That's not the only goal that the Matthews line gave up. They gave up on that pizza by Mitch Marner later on in the game that resulted in the goal in the actual goal that Jesper Boquist scored. But it's just about continue to swarm them. I mean, before they scored those last the 2 goals. 3 out of the 4 goals that the Panthers scored were off of poor breakouts by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then you think about how the Panthers and the Leafs, the differential in faceoff percentage, Barkov was the only one who's over 50%, and they get 2 goals off of faceoff wins for them as well. So that's the other thing about just getting to the front of the net, some odd bounces, which we're going to talk about later on in the show. But at the same time, it's just also about the fact that the Leafs couldn't also close their gap swap. I mean, on the second goal of the game where Kulikov scored off of the stick of Lawton, Benoit takes a strange angle, and then that's where Carter Hagee's able to create the turnover, get it from the far side, near the far side boards, all the way to the near side point before they work D to D. And oh my goodness, it was like the Maple Leafs were like a chicken without a head at times. I mean, even on the one power play that they got, even though it was going into the third period, even if it was 4-0, the Panthers were back with a loose puck. Joseph Wall was trying to handle the puck, and you don't see as many guys back. And also there was a change that the Panthers were having. I noticed it more on line changes as well, where 5 Toronto Maple Leafs were in their D zone. The second line was coming on, and then they're slow to break it out. They're hesitating and trying to do a little bit of a handle. While the Panthers, they get it out. They were not even when they get out, when they're supporting the puck, they're connecting it. It's not unforced errors, and it's not a different handle. It's just whoop right out of their own end.
That's so well said. And I wish Bob could have gotten his second straight shutout in this one. I think there was a 1:06 on the clock when Toronto finally got that goal from Nick Robertson, and you heard some kind of sarcastic cheers from the crowd. But you think about how close Bob was. I mean, seconds away, 66 seconds from getting his second straight shutout. And at that point, the drought for Toronto was 143 minutes and change. 143 minutes in the series without a goal. And that leads me to my next point. I mean, obviously for the Panthers, it's not necessarily been success from the superstars or just the superstars that's led them to this position. It's really been an all hands on deck effort, from all your lines. And a lot of times that third line has been the driving force. But on the flip side of that, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you just really get the feeling that if they're going to refine their footing in this series, you've got to get something from your superstars. I mean, I want to call the police up there and report a couple missing persons, because I'm not sure Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner were actually on the ice if they showed up to the arena today. I think I did see at one point in the second period, Matthews had a couple of back-to-back shots. Bob stopped one. He took another crack at the rebound. Bob stopped the second one. That was really like my only evidence that Austin Matthews was on the ice today, and it's been like that all series long. And I guess that is credit to the Florida Panthers for keeping two of the best Maple Leafs in their back pocket throughout the series. But at the same time, you're a superstar in this league. You're supposed to transcend that. You're supposed to create those moments, and you're supposed to rise above that. And we're just not seeing it on the Maple Leafs side. And maybe at some point within the next game or two, hopefully just one more game, they wake up a little bit. But to this point, I mean, the Panthers have done a great job keeping them bottled up.
Yeah. And his shot logs for all the games here, 3 times where he's had 3 shots on goal, 1 time where he's had 5. Tonight he had 6 for the Leafs. I mean, a lot of them came in garbage time for him. But even Mitch Marner, in these last 3 games, he's only had 2 shots on goal, so about neutralizing. And also, the Panthers using the body, while the ESPN did a little bit of a breakdown about how they're reaching for the stick. So that's a difference whenever it comes to just the will, when it comes to the Panthers, and how they're separating the puck and continuing to get the possession for them in their own end. And just they live there. They made Joseph Wall's night. They rattled him, even though 2 goals even though one of the goals, the Mikola goal, was no screen there. But you think about how the Panthers got to them psychologically. I mean, you sometimes when that happens, you overthink on certain shots that you're facing against. For the Panthers, total at 5-on-5, 66 shot attempts to 44. 60% they owned in the Corsi 4 on the night for them. So just continue.
And weren't we were 5-on-5 the whole way until early third period, right? I don't think we got we didn't even get a power. I think Toronto had the first power play. We had several in the third period, but we were even strength for the first 40.
Well, 2 penalties, 2 penalties, one towards the end, and then one in the middle of the second period. So only 2, but that's still not a lot of time. It was basically penalty free, and then all the other penalties were just a lot of roughings at the end. So a good amount of time that the Panthers spent at 5-on-5 in this one.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it easy to bet, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props, from 3-pointers to steals to assists. There's just so many ways to bet your favorite props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place your first $5 bet on today's lone NBA game. The Nuggets, a game away from elimination, are 4.5-point home dogs to the Thunder. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Shut the door, 1 in overtime, and they're going to the conference final.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers.
You know this elimination game. And as much as I get on the talking heads, the people who are on the intermission reports, the color commentators, the between the benches reporter, sometimes the cliches, the dogma that gets repeated over and over and over again, sometimes there's a glimmer of truth in there. And when those people tell you the hardest win is the 4th one, they know what they're talking about. And the choices Chris Knobloch made in this game that put the Oilers in a position to win were not the most obvious. And they were not necessarily choices that I think suit his team. But the fact that the Oilers were able to adapt in the way they were in this game, in relation to how they played in the playoffs at large, and more specifically this series against Vegas, This was a rock fight. This was, frankly, coming into the series, what I expected the series to be. And hand up, I picked Vegas to win the series in 7 games because I thought it would be 7 games of this. I thought it would be 7 games of 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, where Vegas having slightly better defense and slightly better goaltending would be the difference. And couldn't be happier to be wrong, frankly. I'm very glad I was wrong, and the Oilers did prove me wrong by playing a few different types of hockey throughout the course of this series. And tonight, Chris Knobloch put a lineup together with the mindset of, we are going to match what Vegas does. We are going to bend, but we're not going to break. We're going to play no doubles defense. We're going to sit in a cover 2 look. So, excuse me here as I talk a little bit of football X's and O's, but one of the real revelations of the last few seasons in the NFL has been the proliferation and distribution of 2 high looks, meaning 2 safeties on the back end of the defense. And the idea of those guys is they're going to keep everything in front of them, that you're not going to beat them over the top. And in doing that, it has invited offenses to throw underneath more, shorter passes that get the ball out quicker from the quarterback's hands. And then those guys with the ball make plays out on the perimeter. And by doing this, defenses are trying to increase the number of variables in a given game. They are trying to increase the number of plays in hopes that they will tire out the offense or force the offense into making a mistake. And one of the original ways teams tried to stop these high-powered offenses with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa even fits in this conversation, Justin Herbert, as far as moving the ball and explosive plays. The first thing they tried to do was not give them the ball at all. And that's what Vegas tried to do tonight. The way teams were playing the Chiefs, the Bills, the Bengals, we're going to run the ball. We're going to keep the clock moving. You're not getting your best players out on the field, and we are going to shorten the game. We are going to make each and every one of these plays more valuable because there are fewer total plays in the game. And that was the Vegas approach tonight. Low event hockey and hoping that their star players would be able to make plays on a handful of sequences, and that would be able to swing the game. And credit to Vegas for coming out with what I would describe as a unique game plan. And I say it's unique in the respect that we're shifting away from this. In all of sports, we're shifting away from the idea of trying to win with defense because it's more difficult. We know if you put an emphasis on chance creation, regardless, just offense creation, I should say, because you're not scoring points or goals in every game, you are trying to outscore your opponent. It is easier to outscore your opponent when your emphasis is on offense and you're not as caught up with trying to be perfect defensively. And Vegas, to their credit, played a great game tonight. I thought the penalty killing Vegas did on Edmonton was outstanding. They did not score a power play goal in this series on the road. The Oilers have yet to score a power play goal on the road through 2 playoff series now, which is crazy to say out loud, but they are finding a way to win these games at 5-on-5, and it speaks to the resilience of the team. And I'm going to talk about the lineup decisions Chris Knobloch made to withstand what he saw coming from Vegas, and frankly, he read the room perfectly, and I have so much respect for Chris Knobloch's understanding of his guys. And we're going to talk about that in a second, so I don't want to step on my own toes here. But to tie a bow on this opening segment, this is the type of game that in the regular season, the Oilers find a way to lose. If you'll recall, these 2 teams played a 1-0 game in the regular season where the Oilers were on the other side of it, where Evan Bouchard went down to Snow Angel to break up a 2-on-1. The puck went underneath him. It changed direction as it went underneath him, and Skinner was going post to post to try and make the save, and it didn't because it got stopped by Bouchard, but it had enough momentum to go into the net. And the Oilers lost that game 1-0 on a night where they couldn't get pucks to the middle. Vegas clogged the center lanes of the ice. There were no flanks for one-timers. There were no passing lanes to get that pass across from side to side to try and get Aiden Hill moving. Tonight, there wasn't a whole lot of room out there. I give a lot of credit to Aiden Hill bouncing back for a really poor Game 4, in all honesty, and he played great tonight. The Oilers had quite a few chances on breakaways off of rushes, and I think that's the hint. When you're playing a team like Vegas that is trying to actively slow the game down, that is trying to play a heavy cycle game, it's going to force you to create off of the rush more.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game. Whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking up the excitement of an NBA matchup, finding great seats at a great price, though, that used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. With last-minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime.
Golden State Warriors season's over. Where do they go from here? The Timberwolves winning by 11 in a game that flipped with Mike Conley, not the 37-year-old that I thought would flip a series. But he did it, knocking down some deep threes in the first half, and the Warriors truly never recovered. Welcome, Kolsky.
Oh, thanks. It's funny. You're not wrong. Anthony Edwards did some stuff tonight. Obviously, Julius Randle was awesome. But that stretch where Conley hit the big threes and Minnesota jumped out to that lead was kind of the decisive stretch of the game in a lot of ways. And the Warriors looked like they were right back in it. It felt like if they could hold some momentum into halftime, they'd have a shot in this thing. And then before half, they just got brutalized, man. And look, on the death certificate, the 2025 Warrior playoff run will say Wednesday, May 14th at, 9:11 p.m. But I think we all know that this thing was actually pronounced a little over a week ago when Steph Curry grabbed his hamstring and called for a sub.
I thought they could get one, though. I thought they could get one and give him a
thought
chance,
they could
because
too.
all odds were that he would have played game 6, right? That's what everything was pointing towards. Because of the Valkyries playing on Friday, they had extra rest. They would have gone Sunday. All you needed was one of these three, 2 of them at home. Wasn't enough to get it done. We'll get into Butler in a minute.
All you needed was one of these 3, and then to win the next 2 with Steph on, a questionable hamstring.
But to not give him a chance.
I agree. It would have been great. I also thought getting 1 out of 3 was a doable task. But I think in the end, having watched those 3 games, what I would say is, and really it was 1 out of 4, by the way, but I think we all kind of threw away game 2. What I would say in retrospect is that in order to accomplish that task, the Warriors needed not only a big performance from Jonathan Kuminga, not only Jimmy Butler to be playoff Jimmy, but then on top of that, some other guys to show up. And they just couldn't get everything going the same night. I mean, Jimmy had the one big game, and then you could see these last 2. I mean, they said he was sick. Who knows if that's true or not. He certainly was not the playoff Jimmy they needed to get a win. There's just no debate about it. And
you know what I'd compare this to, man? Finish up, whatever you're
well,
saying.
We can talk about Buddy or Pods having a couple bad games, or Moody not showing up till it was too late, whatever. We can talk about all these things. At the end of the day, Steph went out and Jimmy Butler did not perform at the level they needed. And they were never going to win this series without those things happening.
All right, I'm going to bring up some PTSD for Giants fans, aside from the fact that they won, 107 with Farhan's, what would we call them? The platoon guys, right? And that's, I mean, look at the Wolves compared to the Warriors. The Wolves are the way you want to do it. They played 8 guys in this series consistently. You knew what you were going to get every single night from pretty much Naz Reid, from pretty much DiVincenzo or an Alexander Walker. You knew that Randall and Anthony Edwards were going to be the 2 leading scorers, that Gobert was going to be Gobert. Conley was better than, quite frankly, any 37 outside of Steph Curry should be. He was great in today's game, had 16, 8, and 6. Mike Conley, who played on the same national championship floor as Joakim Noah, who's been out of the league for 5 years, That Mike Conley is still affecting this series. But you knew what you were going to get with the Wolves. With the Warriors, it was the San Francisco Giants. It was the platooning nonstop. We saw 16 from Santos today, 16 minutes. We saw 10 minutes from Quentin Post. We saw him go to Pat Spencer before Moses Moody in the game today, and then go to Moody, and Moody all of a sudden sparks a run that brings the Warriors back down to 9. Edwards hits a 3. Dagger. It was a dagger a long time ago. Like you mentioned, the dagger was thrown game 1 in this series. But the Warriors need to get to a point where the strength in numbers was great. It had its day, but they have to get to a point where they have 8 reliable guys that can go out there. And quite frankly, Kuminga became one of those guys when it was too late. You were right all along. Pie in my face. Throw me on Golden Gate Bridge and chuck some tomatoes at my head. I mean, for God's sakes, you were right. And he pulls Kuminga and puts in Spencer and Santos. So, look,
yeah,
it was over regardless. Forget the rotations and everything. That's more of a long-term issue, right? That really didn't affect tonight.
I mean, listen,
Wolves are too good.
Yeah, the Wolves are too good to lose Steph Curry from a team that was already, let's be honest, with Steph Curry. I think really we all lost out on what could have been a heck of a competitive series.
I know.
Because honestly, like, the Wolves, as good as they can be, have some flaws that they didn't exactly clean up. I mean, how many times they turned it over 21 times tonight? I obviously they had a chance with Steph. More than that, I would say this would have been a pretty even and highly competitive series if Steph Curry had been available. Even
we'll never know.
Yeah, even if Jimmy Butler had a couple off nights, even if Brandon Pajemski showed up 1 out of 3, like with Steph, that's how good Steph is. So, to a degree, it is what it is. Injury luck is what it is. There's a sliding doors rabbit hole we could go down. And I think a lot of people would just point directly to the Rocket series as far as Kuminga at least goes, but the rotations in general and the coaching approach in general, and say that, boy, they were awfully casual throwing away game 5 in that Houston series when they had a chance to get it over with more quickly. And what might that have looked like? But for me, the sliding door, you could put it anywhere in the last 3 years, man, because Jonathan Kuminga, look, you can't just hop into an NBA playoff game after sitting for weeks and casually score 20 plus points over and over again. Unless you're at least worth looking at.
Yeah.
Like I and again, I think I have been somewhat misinterpreted because I've been talking about him a lot as saying that, here, this is exactly it. Nobody said that. I mean, people say things like this to me. Oh, stop saying Kuminga's Kevin Garnett. Stop saying Kuminga's Kobe. Nobody said that. I have not heard a single person, with all the people, national, local, and otherwise, defending or talking about the unfortunate treatment of Jonathan Kuminga over the last couple of years. Never have I heard anyone suggest that he is not a flawed player. He is clearly a flawed player. Like most 21, 22-year-old kids without a ton of experience, he is flawed. The argument has always been, when this kind of talent is inside there, what is the purpose of letting it rot on the bench? The things that Jonathan Kuminga needs to get better at are the sorts of things that improve from playing time. And everyone comparing him to Franz Wagner or Scotty Barnes is ignoring the fact that those guys have played almost twice as many minutes as Jonathan Kuminga over 4 years. And we'll never know. Someday we'll find out what kind of career Kuminga has, right? He's going to have a career, and at the end we can decide how good it was. But we'll never know what might have happened if Steve Kerr had been willing to put faith in this guy when we saw the initial flashes that this sort of stuff was possible. And if he had just let him play through some of his mistakes, if he had just invested confidence in him like he has done with Brandon Pajemski or Guy Santos or Gary Payton. Who knows what this season and the last couple seasons for the Warriors might have looked at? We'll never get to know that. And there's nobody to blame for that besides Steve Kerr, who, again, to answer someone's question, yes, I still believe he's a great coach. But for whatever reason, this guy, Jonathan Kuminga, has been a blind spot for Steve Kerr, and it has been to the obvious detriment of the entire Warriors organization.
The thing is, they will still potentially have him as an asset this offseason if the sign and trade is a possibility. We'll talk about that coming up. Do want to tie a ribbon on this season. On tomorrow's show, I'll get into kind of the season as a whole, the obit, we like to call it, where I will legit spend 4 hours of my day, and this may be in a couple of days because it may take a while, but I'm going to go through every single show. I'm going to find the most ridiculous takes. I'm going to compile them together. So you'll get in one show like Lindy Waters is the next, Damon Stoudemire. I don't know who I would even compare him to in any of these shows, but we'll run through that when that day comes. But for now, let's tie a ribbon on this game. Brandon Pajemski finally shows up. He was 11-19, 4 of 6, had 28 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists. Pajemski is extremely cheap. He's extremely young. He's also pretty good. Is he 39 minutes a game good? He was tonight, but he at the very least is a nice part of this future. Buddy Hield has had such an up and down season. He was bad tonight. 4 turnovers in the game, 8 points, 0 of 4 from 3. The Buddy Hield cycle went like this, and all of a sudden, instead, it's supposed to kind of creep around in clock-like formation, and it just went like the Tower of Terror at Disney, just all the way down to the bottom.
But Buddy,
he had a great run in the playoffs, and he is worth every penny. I mean, if that's what we're talking about financially, Jimmy Butler is the one that did not earn his paycheck tonight, quite frankly.
And Draymond. And that's the problem here is we can debate whether Kuminga should have played more. We can talk about Pods not yet being consistent enough and Buddy falling off a cliff tonight, which he absolutely did. But those guys are paid to be that level of player. Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler, in the absence of Steph, are paid to be elite. Draymond was not good enough. Yeah, well, yes, but Draymond wasn't good enough tonight on either.
No, not even defensively. Yeah.
Yes, and Butler, all that stuff that we saw from Jimmy and Draymond towards the end of the season, just bamboozling opponents on the defensive end. None of that the last 2 games to break up what the Wolves were doing. The Wolves didn't have a great offensive game in terms of anything but shooting, and they lit the Warriors up. They turned it over 21 times. The Warriors won the rebounding battle. The defense wasn't good enough. Jimmy wasn't aggressive enough. Draymond, not good enough. And those are the problems moving forward, right? Is those guys have to be great based on the way this team is designed right now if you're going to keep all 3 of them. And even if you do keep all 3 of them, and they are pretty good, you're going to need a legitimate third scorer, and it is really tough to imagine where that guy comes from.
The NBA playoffs roll on, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action right now. When you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes it easy to bet, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props from 3-pointers to steals to assists. There's just so many ways to bet your favorite props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. You can place your first $5 bet on today's lone NBA game. The Nuggets, a game away from elimination, are 4.5-point home dogs to the Thunder. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Derrick Henry signs a massive extension with the Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Derrick Henry signs a massive extension on NFL schedule release night. And I know there's controversy on NFL schedule release night, but look, this was a deal that a lot of people were hoping would get done. It felt like the first domino to fall, or at least hopefully to fall. So Derrick Henry officially a member of the Ravens through the 2027-2028 season. It's a 2-year extension for Derrick Henry. This coming first from Adam Schefter. It is a 2-year extension, $30 million. So you're looking at $15 million per year on this extension, and $25 million of that is fully guaranteed. So it's a historic contract for running back over 30. It's the most money for running back over 30, according to Adam Schefter. And look, Henry's a guy that this absolutely had to get done for. Brian McFarland, who we actually had on the show last week, and he talked about a Derrick Henry extension. He said that was the one that made the most sense to happen. So if you've been listening to Locked On Ravens, you knew this might be coming down the pipeline, and you knew that this would be the first extension that was to happen. Brian says, and we don't know the structure at the time of this recording yet. We're recording pretty soon after the news actually broke. But he says that this would clear up, if his structure was correct on what he put together, it would create about $4 million in cap space for the Ravens in 2025. Now, again, not sure how accurate that number is right now because, Brian does note here that he wants to see how close he got on the structure of the deal, but it feels like it'll be around that much money, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. I'm not sure yet, but Albert Breer putting in the cash flow of the deal here for Derrick Henry, where his 2025 year, this upcoming season, is $14 million of fully guaranteed money, 2026, $11 million of fully guaranteed money, 2027, at $12 million of fully guaranteed money. So Breer notes here, Henry had 1 year and $7 million left. So he gets $18 million for the extra year with the team and getting the option year in 2027. So I'm not sure if there is an option on this. I mean, again, I think that for you, if you're Baltimore, I don't know, like player options or anything, but the fully guaranteed not being there in 2027 means that there's wiggle room where if it doesn't work out in 2026 or something happens, there's the option for Baltimore to get out in 2027. So could just be a 1-year extension when it's all said and done, depending on how Henry's career goes and, what the next 2 years hold for him. But I mean, let's be honest, Henry showed no signs of slowing down. And, I see a lot of people super excited about this. Edgar, we got King in here. Primetime saying lots of money for a 30-year-old running back, but let's hope it works out. Yeah, it is a lot of money. And I see Cam talking about, Kevin, do you find it interesting he got a pay raise considering his age and position, or is he being so underpaid this year that it only made sense for a pay increase? Cam, I lean the latter on this one. Just because, with the Barkley, if the Ravens had gotten Henry done this extension before Barkley, it would have been less money. But as is with all positions in the NFL, I mean, we saw this with the quarterback position with Lamar, if you remember that whole situation where, guys were getting signed to extensions before Lamar, and that increased the price on Lamar Jackson. Now, I guess it was a little different in that situation if you want to compare Barkley and Henry, because obviously Barkley is a lot younger at this point than Derrick Henry is in the running back position. There are those preconceived notions, but it'd be one thing if Henry showed any sign of fatigue or, like he wasn't the same player. And while I'm not saying Derrick Henry at 31 years old is in, the peak of his prime, he's just beginning his prime, he still is a top running back in this league. I mean, he's at least top 2 in my opinion. Some people put Saquon over him. Some people put Henry 1. Like, to me, he's an unquestioned, depending on how you feel about Barkley, unquestioned top 2 running back in this league. And, Primetime saying he stays healthy, that's always a positive. And look, I'll bring up Derrick Henry's stats here because I do want to just go over, and this is something I always marvel at when talking about Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry has been one of the most used running backs in the NFL over the course of his career. And that didn't change in 2024 yet. 325 carries in Baltimore, 1,921 yards, and obviously 16 rushing touchdowns last season, along with his almost 200 yards receiving and two receiving touchdowns. But you look at Henry's career, that 325 for him was actually the third most in his career in terms of carries. He had 378 in Tennessee in 2020, 349 in 2022 in Tennessee. He had the year of 325. He had 303. He had 219, 215. Derrick Henry in 9 years has had 2,355 carries That averages out over 17 games, 294 carries per season. Now, the remarkable thing about this for him is that he rarely misses games. He rarely gets injured. Over the course of his career, we're going to do some quick math here on Locked On Ravens. He has missed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right around 11 games. I'm not sure when the NFL went to 17 games, so I might be off by a game or two because I'm counting some as 16 games and some as 17 games. But regardless, Henry, 15 games, 16 games, 16 games, 15 games, 16 games, 8 games, 16 games, 17 games, and 17 games. The guy barely misses time. And we've seen how he puts so much attention and effort into his body, spends so much money on his body to make sure that he is ready for every NFL season. He puts so much care on it, and he's someone that really cares about being in his best shape. So I am okay with this deal. Now, that's not to say there aren't risks with it, where Henry is 31 years old. You know, it's not like we're talking about a 26-year-old Derrick Henry here, but it would feel different if we saw signs like, for example, the big example of this is probably Mark Ingram. Right now, Ingram didn't sign an extension with the Ravens, but he came in 2019 and he had that 15 total touchdown season. He was awesome. 2020, he fell off a cliff. He was bad in 2020. And I love Mark, right? Mark was awesome for the Ravens on the field, in the locker room, but there was a significant drop-off in Mark, I think, that year. Let me confirm it real quick. But Mark, I think, turned 30 during that 2020 season. And that's, that's the age. Yeah. No, okay, so 2019, Ingram was 30. And that was his year. He had 10 rushing touchdowns, 15 receiving touchdowns. Then 2020, he was 31, and he missed time with injuries. The yards per carry numbers went down. All the efficiency numbers went down. It was bad. So there are a bunch of different scenarios that this could end up playing out. And yeah, Rick, 2021, I appreciate you for clarifying that. I feel like this makes sense, though. Right? Henry's a guy that even if he showed a little sign of slowing down, like if he does that this season, that still is a great year for an NFL running back, right? Even if you factor in and you want to bake in a little bit of a drop-off for Derrick Henry in 2025, which I personally am not doing. I think Derrick Henry still is in tip-top shape and is still a very high-quality running back. It's fine for me. Like, yes, the almost fully guaranteed aspect of it in terms of $25 million of that money being fully guaranteed, okay. But those are the things that you have to do now that a guy like Saquon Barkley has already signed. And you know what? James Cook is breathing heavy, kind of wondering, hey, when is it going to be my turn here, right? He's kind of breathing down the back of the Bills' neck saying, where's my money? Where's my deal? And now this actually hurts Buffalo. This deal hurts the Bills. Right? And that's just the nature of it. It's the nature of extensions. We talked about it with Kirby Joseph when he signed his deal with the Lions. Kyle Hamilton becomes a bit more expensive. If a center signs before Linderbaum and he breaks Creed Humphrey's mark, that will make Linderbaum more expensive. So the Ravens in this process actually hurt an AFC rival in doing so. And that, to me, is just the nature of the business here. Henry is an anomaly, I feel like, in terms of these running backs. And look, literally, physically, this man is ridiculous. Like, he's just a mammoth of a man. He's incredible. But just the way that he's been able to stay healthy with his workload and be a productive running back. I mean, this man, last year in his age 30 season, and again, Lamar Jackson's in that backfield, and I hated that. I hated that conversation we had to have so many times about, oh, Henry's only doing well because Lamar's only doing well because of Henry. Can't both guys help each other? Can't situations be good and guys play well and, it not have to be torn down? Can't we just build up both guys here? Henry averaged 5.9 yards per carry. 5.9. That was a career best by him by half a yard. His only two other years with over 5 yards a carry, 5.4 and 5.1. Don't you see what you can do if you put some good offensive linemen like a Linderbaum and Stanley and Rosengarten behind Derrick Henry or in front of him and Ricard, right? It's a good situation. And guess what? People tend to thrive in good situations. That's exactly what Derrick Henry did. And I'm not going to take that away from him because he had a better team than he had in Tennessee. That Tennessee offensive line was awful during his final years there. And people are saying, man, look what Derrick Henry, look what he's trying to do with what he has. It's not great. put a competent offensive line, a competent quarterback, a competent offense around Derrick Henry, and he'd be awesome. And then it happens, and everyone's like, oh, well, now he's just being made by the offense. He's not actually good. Like, make up your mind, man. Like, come on now. Henry, I'm very pleased with this deal. It had to happen. And plus the fact that Henry has enjoyed his time so much with the Ravens so far, I mean, that makes it all the sweeter, right? Where he's said that he would ideally like to retire as a member of the Ravens. He had a lot of fun in his first year in Baltimore. He's gushed about Lamar Jackson and this team and, you know, the pedigree, the organization. Like, that's a guy you want in your locker room. And you know what? If you have to overpay, and I'm not saying this is a quote unquote overpay, but if you have to overpay by $1 million or $2 million in a deal like that, I'm fine with it, because those are the types of players I think you want in your locker room, you want on the field for you. And again, if it all goes poorly, it essentially is just a 1-year extension, and that money is fully guaranteed in 2026, as Albert Breer noted. And then after that, in 2027, you have the option, if you're the Ravens, to get out of it. And that's usually how extensions like this work, where you kind of figure out the money in terms of a way where you can get out of it after a certain amount of years. And for Baltimore, that is going to be 2027. So best case scenario, Henry has 3 more awesome years, retires a Raven, or even keeps going after that if he's still really good. But, you know, in the event there is a bad scenario, which is not entirely out of the realm of possibility, you know, you have to account for it with everybody, then Baltimore still has a way to get out of the deal.